In this video, I'm going to show you how to add questions to a quiz that you've developed for formative assessment. It's actually no different at all than adding questions to a quiz for anything else, but just in case this is your first exposure to the quiz tool in Moodle, I thought it made sense to work through that. Plus, I'll take a few extra moments to talk about the feedback opportunities that exist inside of quiz questions. So if you've just created the quiz and you hit the save and display, it'll appear, this will appear. If you hit save and return to course, then you'll simply click on the quiz and this will appear. You can click on edit quiz that shows up right here, or you can come to edit quiz that shows up right here under quiz administration. They both take you to the same place. You're not editing the setup that we just did. To do that, you come to edit settings. This is editing the content of the quiz. So we're here inside of that, and there's nothing at all here. And it's interesting because for all of this stuff, the most important thing on here is one of the hardest to find, and that's right over here, which is the add. It is a drop-down menu, so we can add a new question, or maybe we have a question bank already and we want to pick from that, or we want to add a random question from that. These are all pretty useful. This video won't go into the development of question banks, but I will let you know that if you create a quiz, all of those questions become a question bank of their own with the name of the quiz as the name of the question bank. So if you think you're going to be doing a lot of quizzes, or you want students to have a random set of questions that they're drawing from as they are quizzing themselves or drilling, you would start out by creating a single quiz that's not a real functional quiz that students will use. So you don't need to do any of all those other settings. You just name it and save it. So you can come in here and then you put every possible question you're going to want. That's going to build a question bank for you and then give you the opportunity when creating the real quiz to add random questions. We are going to, and I'll show that in just a moment once I've actually done something a little interesting to import in a question into the question banks. All right, but just straight adding a new question, we go here, add a new question, you pick your question type. Multiple choice is what it sounds like, true, false is what it sounds like, short answer is a single line. Numeric means you can only put in numbers. Calculated is, I have not actually used it. It's designed to create randomized numbers inside of pre-created equation questions in some way, which might or might not be of use to you. Essay is a text box. They fill in an essay. You do have to grade those yourself. Matching, what it sounds like, it'll automatically grade. Random short answer matching. Embedded answers. This is if you want to have multiple blanks in a set of text that they then fill in. It's a little weird to put together, and you might need to talk with me about doing these types of questions because it involves, it's not like a click here, menus, drag and drop. You have to use something called close code to create these. All or nothing multiple choice, which is nice. It's opposed to multiple choice where they can get partial credit if they marked, if two answers are appropriate, but you want them to mark only, like A is okay and C is okay. As long as they answered one of those, they get full credit. Or maybe they need to mark both A and C, but you'll give them half credit for one or the other. Then you use multiple choice. But if you have a scenario where you need them to mark A and C, or they get nothing, you'll choose this kind of multiple choice. Calculated multiple choice, we've already talked about the calculated questions. We'll need to do a little research together to figure out exactly how to make those work. Drag and drop into text, drag and drop markers, so that puts putting basically flags or pins onto an image. Oh, that's this one. This is onto some text. Drag and drop matching. These are all really nice looking and pretty questions, and feel free to give them a shot. They do rely on the student's computer's browser being capable of handling the code that's inside of these, which means up-to-date Java basically the Oracle Java plugin kind of a thing is working. Most of the time that's not an issue in most browsers, but it does open up the possibility of a problem for a student within their browser. So for an online course, you might want to create a test, like an example quiz that's not worth anything and it's just for fun, so that all the students can test whether or not their browser can actually use this question type before you rely upon these. Select missing words. This is a new question type for the quizzes, and in this one you'll have a block of text with missing words, and the students choose it. I would suggest using that as opposed to the embedded answers, the closed one, just because it's really easy to set up. A description, this other thing, that's not actually a question. It just allows you to place a piece of informative information at some point between questions. So this is, for instance, if you had 4 questions that all refer to the same piece of text, the piece of text can live here inside of description, and then the 4 questions would follow after that. All right, so we're just going to select a multiple choice and click Add. Inside of the Moodle quizzes, every question has to have a name, and this is because the question lives in a question bank. This is not the text of the question. This is just what you've named it so that it is searchable within the question bank and viewable within the question bank that is going to appear. I often just use code for myself, quiz 1, question 1, something like that. If you want to use something more descriptive, that's fine. Maybe all of your quizzes are based on chapters in a text, so it might be chapter 1, quiz 1, so on. Here are is the place where you actually put the question text. What color are apples? This is just an HTML editor like everywhere else in Moodle. If I click that, I get a few more options here. Text type, bolds, bullets. I can highlight text and create links if I wanted to, although that's not as useful. I can place in an image or a video. Underlining, cross-throughs, subscripts, superscripts, all of these kind of things. If you are doing this in a math class of some sort or another and need to have access to an equation editor, there are some equation editors here. There, I just needed to pull that out a little bit more so we could see this. There is a special characters, there's creating a table, your font family, font size. If you, for some reason, have some actual HTML that you want to use to handle how this works, I'm going to do something so we can see that. This brings up our HTML editor. It's unlikely that's going to happen, but if you did, find, replace, search for something, remove any messy code. If you've copied and pasted your text and other things from somewhere else, the HTML may not be perfect. This is particularly an issue when you copy and paste out of Word. So if you're going to copy and paste out of Word, rather than just Control-V or Command-V, come here to the paste out of Word. And this is if you need this to be a little bit bigger. So you create your question. What's the point value for this question? General feedback, that's for the entire question. So this is what I really wanted to do in this part of the creating questions, is talk about feedback. This is, if the purpose of the quiz is for students to be learning something along the way, feedback is a good idea. If the purpose of the question is drilling, then it's not as necessary. If the purpose of the question is to make sure that students understand why an answer might be wrong or right, so that would be obviously learning, having feedback related to each answer would make a lot of sense. So one of my answers here might be blue, and my feedback to that is, there is no recorded example of a blue apple, so on. There is not a direct spell check here, although believe it or not, there is, oh wait, I lied. There used to be a spell check here, and I think this particular one doesn't have it. There we go. So having a little feedback related to this makes perfect sense if they're needing to understand why an answer was wrong or right. Grade, that's what proportion of that 1 point do they get if they marked this answer? In this case, it would be none because that's incorrect. And then maybe we'll come down here and say green, and perhaps you had some additional feedback. And let's say you're going to give them full credit for green. They only need to go, and down here you're going to say red, and you're going to go ahead and give them full credit too. Or maybe you wanted them to be 50% and 50%. Again, options for you exist. Additional choices in the questions that you don't use won't show up. If you need more, you click there. Just a couple of other things to back up here to this. There, that's a general feedback. Are they allowed to mark more than one? You need to tell it that. So if I wanted them to mark both of the green and the red, I would need to have changed that to multiple answers allowed. Do I want to shuffle my choices by default? Right now it's yes. What do you prefer for your choice? The default is probably fine. All right, so we have all these answers we just did. Combined feedback. So for any correct response, so rather than dealing with each thing individually, maybe you want any partial correct. These are sort of defaults at the moment, and they show up for any quiz at all. You may want to change that a little bit. Multiple tries. Do you want them, and again, this is very useful if we're looking at a scenario with students who are using this quiz to help learn, but maybe you want something that's a hybrid, that they can take it more than once. You'd like for them to reach some form of success, but it's also meant to test their learning. And in that case, maybe have them take it more than once, but you have a penalty for incorrect takings. If they're taking it, if this is meant to be purely a learning experience, you would drop that down to 0%. If you set this to allow multiple attempts and you set it to be interactive with feedback or something like that, you're going to want to change that to 0. But otherwise, maybe you're going to shave a little bit of that. Here's where you have a chance to put some hints in if they got it wrong. You don't have to, but you can do that. And that's it for creating a quiz question. In the next video, we'll look at question banks. I'm just going to click Save Changes and move on. Oops. Positive grades do not add up to 100%. Instead, they add up to 200%. That is because I did the multiple questions allowed kind of a thing. So I need to change these to 50% each, so that it stops getting annoyed with me. Moodle will let you know if you've done something wrong. All right, save changes. Now we're good, and our question is there.